Okay, hello, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Welcome. Trying something a little different in the setup here. So if you notice this big stick sticking in here, this is the shotgun mic that I usually use. I have a more fancy audio mic that I've been trying to set up, but I keep getting a lot of background hiss I'm not sure how to get rid of. It's a phantom powered mic for those of you out there who know. But I've gone back to this shotgun and I brought it into the picture. I apologize for that. But as these videos are about talking, I want to make sure that my voice is clear so that you can understand, even when I mumble, what it is I'm trying to say. If this is too annoying, I'll move it back out of the way. But if it makes a qualitative difference in how well you can hear me talking, then I think we can all just tolerate it there, because that's what this is about, other than Buddhism, of course. So let me know. You guys have been really good about sharing your thoughts and your questions in the comments, and thank you. Thank you, all of you guys. I can't think of all your names right now, but I super appreciate your taking the time and the courage, because quite frankly, sharing emails and texts back and forth in the comments, it's easy for words to get weird, you know. My artist friend, who's now deceased, she used to call it mutable meaning. And we deal with that in Buddhism as the whole, right? Anyway, so enough on that business. This next Go Show that we're going to start today, that I'm going to start, is Letter to the Sage Nichimyo. This is a letter written to a woman who has a child and was separated from her husband at a young age. I don't have details on how she was separated. Did he go off to war and die? Did he just leave her for some other courtesan? I don't know. But the central point is, in Nichiren's time, as we've discussed before, women are not a privileged class. So as far as travel goes, for women to travel independently on their own, not only taboo, but very vulnerable. It was pretty much unheard of that a woman without a man, either as her husband or her protector or her whatever, would take her somewhere with them. For women to travel, perhaps not in town, but for great distances, was very precarious, in addition to being kind of taboo, looked down upon. And she, with a child, endeavored to travel from Japan all the way to Sado Island. Not an easy journey, and probably had difficulty getting people to arrangements to cross the sea to get to the island. Anyway, so Nichiren, this is all to say that Nichiren in this letter is extremely supportive of her. He plays the role, if you will, of the dutiful husband and teacher. Part of our makeup as bodhisattvas, to teach others, is to take on the role of parent, teacher, and sovereign, right? Not egotistically, but with a mind toward responsibility. So I'm pointing this out because you'll notice the way this letter is written, as he talks about, well, I'll say this: Nichiren is a scholar, and no matter what his discourse, whether it's a treatise or a lot of letters like we've already read to his inner circle or other priests, or correctly monks or head monks, priests a Western term, but he'll reference a lot of sentences or parts of sentences, or sometimes a paragraph, but usually they're just quick references to certain teachings and certain sutras and certain chapters to bolster his point and to demonstrate the logic, if you will. But when he employs this same device for lay believers, regular everyday followers, he tends to elaborate further on the stories. He spends a little less time pounding on them and uses them more as expedient means. Follow this story of this person and how this is like this. And it's a little softer tone and more elaborate on the stories. And if you're not aware that things shift like that, you might get confused as you read through the Gosho that he seems to just go off into these flights of storytelling, and leave you a little bit mystified as to why all of a sudden he's doing that. Well, recognize that he's adapting his scholarship to his audience and who he's speaking to, not only as a lay believer, but specifically as a woman with child, lay believer. So, with all of that in our minds, let's get into it. So, he begins. Once there was an ascetic named Aspiration for the Law. For 12 years he traveled from country to country in search of the teachings of the Thus Come One. During that time, none of the three treasures, the Buddha, the law, the order, or the Sangha, were to be found. Nevertheless, the ascetic continued his quest for Buddhism as desperately as one who is thirsty seeks water, or a starving person looks for food. One day a Brahmin came to him and said, quote, I possess a verse of the sacred teaching. If you are a true seeker of Buddhism, I will impart it to you. The ascetic beseeched him to do so. The Brahmin said, quote, to prove your sincerity, first peel off your skin for parchment, break off one of your bones for a writing brush, grind up its marrow for pigment, and draw your blood to mix the ink. If you are willing to do all these things and thus write down this teaching, I will teach you the Buddha's verse. End quote. The ascetic was overjoyed. He peeled off his skin, dried it, and made parchment of it. He then did all the other things demanded of him, just as he had been told. When he had finished, the Brahmin suddenly vanished. The ascetic bewailed his fate, now gazing up to the heavens, now flinging himself to the ground. The Buddha, sensing his sincerity, emerged from beneath the earth and taught him as follows, quote, practice what accords with the law. Do not practice what contradicts it. One who practices the law will dwell in peace and security, both in his life, this life, and in the next. End quote. The moment the ascetic heard this, he became a Buddha. This teaching consists of 20 Chinese characters. So that's the first paragraph, and you can see right away that the expedient means are completely in full use right here. You might compare this to Shakabuku as shoju within Nichiren's own teaching, right? Once in a previous existence, when Shakyamuni was a wheel-turning king engaged in bodhisattva practice, he revered an 8-character phrase that stated, quote, one who is born is destined to die. To extinguish this cycle is to enter the joy of nirvana, end quote. And that's an important statement right there that we touched on last time about nirvana. Nirvana being a release from the cycle, not a death, not an extinguishing of samsara, or an extinguishing of your life, but actually an extinguishing of samsara, as samsara is the illusory experience of life, right? As an offering to these 8 characters, he gave his own body to fuel 1,000 lanterns. Moreover, he urged others to inscribe those characters on stone walls and made main roads so that people who read them would arouse the aspiration for enlightenment. The light of those lanterns reached as high as the heaven of the 33 gods, where it served as illumination for Chakra and the other heavenly deities. So in 2 paragraphs, we have a pretty solid theme here of the type of resolve, the resolute mind that brings us our Buddha nature, right? When he said in the earlier one, the Buddha came out of the earth, and I've talked about that before too. That symbolism is about this natural, already extant thing that simply manifests mentally in your mind. It's already there, just like the earth beneath you, right? 3rd paragraph. In another past existence, Shakyamuni was carrying out bodhisattva austerities in search of Buddhism. And this refers to his earlier teachings that he was following for years from other Brahmanists, even perhaps some Jainist teachers, before he went off on his own and was awakened to Buddhism. One day, a leper said to him, "I possess the correct teaching which consists of 20 characters. If you will massage my leprous body, embrace it and lick it, feeding me 2 or 3 pounds of your own flesh every day, I will impart the teaching to you," end quote. It's pretty gruesome, right? Shakyamuni did exactly what the leper said, or as the leper said. As a result, he obtained the 20-character teaching and attained Buddhahood. The teaching went, quote, "The thus come one is enlightened to the truth of nirvana and has forever freed himself from the sufferings of birth and death. Anyone who wholeheartedly listens to him will surely obtain immeasurable joy," end quote. So there it is again. The arduous journey with commitment always results in Buddhahood. And he's going to have another one here. This one's a long one. So may have to do this in part 2. Okay, so where did I leave off now? Let's get back to this. The Gosho continues. There was once a boy called Snow Mountains, who lived in the Snow Mountains. Although he had mastered all non-Buddhist teachings, he had not yet encountered Buddhism. Then, one day, he happened to hear a terrifying demon recite a verse that began, quote, "All is changeable, nothing is constant. This is the law of birth and death," end quote. The demon, however, spoke only the first 8 characters of the verse, leaving the rest unsaid. Although the boy was exceedingly glad to have heard the first 8 characters, he felt as though he had been given only half a wish-granting jewel. It was like a plant that flowers but bears no fruit. When the boy asked for the remaining 8 characters, the demon replied, quote, "I have had nothing to eat for several days. I am too dazed with hunger to preach the remaining 8 characters. First, give me some food." The boy asked, "What do you eat?" The demon answered, "I feed on the warm flesh and blood of human beings. Though I can fly anywhere throughout the 4 continents in the space of a moment, I can obtain no warm flesh and blood. Human beings are protected by the heavenly gods, so I cannot kill them unless they commit evil." The boy, Snow Mountains, said, "I will make you an offering of my own body, so teach me the remaining 8 characters so that I can leave the whole teaching behind." The demon said, "You are a cunning fellow, aren't you? Surely you are trying to deceive me." The boy replied, If one is offered gold and silver in exchange for shards and rubble, should one not accept it? If I die to no purpose on this mountain, then my body will be devoured by kites, owls, wolves, and tigers. If you don't know what a kite is, it's a small hawk, and will bring me no benefit whatsoever. On the other hand, if I give my life for the remaining 8 characters, it will be like exchanging dung for food." End quote. The demon was still suspicious. The boy assured him, "There are those who will vouch for my honesty like the Buddhas of ages past. I call upon the great heavenly king Brahma, the heavenly lord Shakra, the gods of the sun and moon, and the 4 heavenly kings to be my witness." Finally, the demon consented to impart the second half of the verse. The boy removed his deerskin garment and spread it out for the demon to sit upon. Then he knelt down and joined his palms together in supplication, begging the demon to be seated. The fierce demon complied and began to recite, quote, "Extinguishing the cycle of birth and death, one enters the joy of nirvana," end quote. When the boy had learned the entire verse, he inscribed it on trees and stones. This completed, he cast himself into the demon's mouth. The boy Snow Mountain was actually Shakyamuni in one of his past existences, while the demon was Chakra in disguise. So again, there's this so I want to invent a word here. There's this amorphizing of the mental processes. Shakyamuni in this story is the Buddha, and the Buddha is not a human. The Buddha is a life state. It's a state of all-knowing clarity without the impediments of attachments and so forth. That does not mean dead or not living being. There's nothing beyond this life. It means that in this life, if we can strip our mental attachments to thingness, then we can penetrate those illusions to understand how they are all changing, ever changing, and not constant, and therefore liberate ourselves from the sufferings that we experience from attachment to self, ego, thing. Right? It's hard to understand, but understand that that's what these stories are all about. They're all about body, flesh. Let that go. Let go the attachment you have with that, and the clarity of mind you seek will appear, and you'll be liberated from that cycle of constantly replacing cells and blood and flesh. Not that you die. Nowhere here does it say that nirvana means you cease living. Nirvana is something you experience while living. It's just a big paradigm shift in your perception of the processes of life. So there it is again, another story. He hasn't even really directly talked to her yet. He's just speaking to her through these stories. And we can tell where he's going to end up here, but still, this is a teaching. This is Shoju. Bodhisattva Medicine King burned his arms for 72,000 years as an offering to the Lotus Sutra. Bodhisattva, never disparaging, was for many years cursed and humiliated, beaten with sticks and staves, and pelted with tiles and stones by countless monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen, because he venerated them by uttering the 24 characters that read, quote, "I have profound reverence for you. I would never dare treat you with disparagement or arrogance. Why? Because you are all practicing the Bodhisattva way and are certain to attain Buddhahood." And just for saying that to people, he was beaten and ridiculed. It's again, you have to understand, what is the meaning of this story? The meaning of this story being that when you practice something with clarity, with generosity, with compassion, what you will often confront in others who are not doing that is jealousy or fear or outright violence, because they're confronted. Even though you don't mean to confront them, they are confronted. Why? Because of their attachments to illusions. Their egos are vulnerable, but you can't let that stop you. So that whole that whole chapter in the sutra is about this. So he's referencing it there. Bodhisattva never disparaging was Shakyamuni Buddha in one of his past lifetimes. Again, wasn't the person Shakyamuni Buddha, but the attainment that Shakyamuni Buddha achieved. That attainment is universal for all of us to experience. I know it's slippery when you read Shakyamuni Buddha, you immediately think the person, but it isn't the person. The word Buddha is the tip-off here. Shakyamuni is the person, but Buddha is the experience, the thing that he experienced that we all can access. King Suzudan performed menial labor in the service of the seer Asita for 1,000 years in order to receive the 5 characters of Myoho Renge Kyo. He even went so far as to make a bed of his own body for his master. As a result, he was reborn as Shakyamuni Buddha. Again, a story of enlightenment, a story of awakening through yeah, it sounds like self-immolation, doesn't it? So in a Western sense, that's a story we're familiar with, isn't it? But it's not meant that way in Buddhism. In Buddhism, it isn't about actually, look, nobody's going to stand there and rip the flesh off their arms and legs and chest and leave them out in the sun to dry them and hand them over. I know that's what it's, those are the words being used in these stories, but that's not the point. The point is unattaching, right? The very act of ripping flesh off is removing your attachment to it. So from a Buddhist mind, this is about attachment, not the actual thing. The Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Law consists of 8 volumes. Reading these 8 volumes is in effect equal to reading 16, for the sutra was expounded by Shakyamuni Buddha and verified by Many Treasures Buddha. The 16 volumes in turn represent innumerable volumes, for the Buddhas of the 10 directions verified their truth. In the same way, each character in the sutra equals 2, for it was uttered by Shakyamuni and confirmed by Many Treasures. Again, a single character equals innumerable others, for the validity of the sutra was attested to by the Buddhas of the 10 directions. The treasures bestowed by a single wish-granting jewel equal those bestowed by 2 such jewels, or by innumerable jewels. Likewise, each character of the Lotus Sutra is like a single wish-granting jewel, and the innumerable characters of the sutra are like innumerable jewels. The character Myo was uttered by 2 tongues, the tongues of Shakyamuni and Many Treasures. The tongues of these 2 Buddhas are like an 8-petaled lotus flower, one petal overlapping another, on which rests a jewel, the character of Myo. So this is an important conceptual thing that's easy to miss. These 2 that he keeps referring to, and Shakyamuni, Many Treasures, I've talked about this before. Shakyamuni represents the earthly manifestation, if you will, the body, the reward body, or the body of Shakyamuni as our samsaric reality of manifestations, while Many Treasures Buddha is a conjured image or entity from Shakyamuni that is used in the sutra to indicate all of this within the sphere of mental creation, of that shift, that paradigm shift in perception that I was talking about earlier, that Buddha mind, unattached to this samsaric reality, but interpenetrating it, which is why we can experience it in this life, right? So those are the 2 features, the samsaric reality, achieving Buddhahood, and Buddhahood being within the samsaric reality, the 2 sides, if you will, of an understanding that is really simply one, the one great vehicle, Myoho Renge Kyo. So that's important. It's important to keep that in mind as you read these stories, because it's easy to get lost in the fanciness of it, if you will, the fantasy, if you will. The jewel of the character Myo contains all the benefits that the thus come one Shakyamuni received by practicing the 6 paramitras in his past existences, the benefits he obtained through the practice of almsgiving, by offering his body to a starving tigress, and by giving his life in exchange for that of a dove. The benefits he obtained when he was King Srutasoma, who kept his word, though it meant his death, in order to observe the precepts, the benefits he obtained as an ascetic, called forbearance, by enduring the tortures inflicted upon him by King Kali, the benefits he obtained as Prince Earnest Donor, and as the ascetic Shojari, and all his other benefits. We, the people of this latter age, you and I, have not formed even a single good cause, but by bestowing upon us the jewel of Myo, Shakyamuni has granted us the same benefit as if we ourselves had fulfilled all the practices of the 6 paramitras. So here we're starting to gain an understanding of these characters and how they relate as they're not just sounds. Yes, they are sounds, but they are conceptually profound. They are conceptually containers, if you will, of these essential aspects of the teachings, of the Dharma, because the Dharma is an experience. It's not solely a teaching. A teaching is there to arrive at the experience. The experience itself is the Dharma. This precisely accords with his statement, quote, "Now this threefold world is all my domain, and the living beings in it are all my children." Now, do you understand that sentence more clearly? This interpenetration of the Buddha mind and everything we experience samsarically. Bound as we common mortals are by earthly desires, we can instantly attain the same virtues as Shakyamuni Buddha, for we receive all the benefits that he accumulated. The sutra reads, quote, "hoping to make all persons equal to me without any distinction between us." These are Shakyamuni Buddha's words. This means that those who believe in and practice the Lotus Sutra are equal to Shakyamuni Buddha. So how can there be any doubt, right? To illustrate, a father and mother unite in conjugal harmony to give birth to a child. No one can dispute that the child is the flesh and blood of its parents. A calf begotten by an ox king, an ox king, will become an ox king. It will never become a lion king. A cub sired by a lion king will become a lion king. It will never become a human king or a heavenly king. Now the votaries of the Lotus Sutra are the children of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings. As the sutra states, quote, "the living beings in it are all my children," end quote. It is not difficult for them to become kings of the law, just as Shakyamuni Buddha did. Unfilial children, however, are not allowed to succeed their parents. King Yao had an heir named Tanchu, and King Shun had a prince named Shangchun. As both sons were lacking in filial piety, they were disowned by their respective fathers and demoted to the rank of commoners. Chung Hua and Yu were the children of commoners, but both were extremely filial. Hearing of this, King Yao and King Shun summoned Chung Hua and Yu and abdicated their thrones to them. Commoners became royalty in a day. Just as a commoner can become a king in this present life, so can an ordinary person become a Buddha instantly. This is the heart of the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, or moment of life. How then can we obtain this benefit? Should we peel off our skins as the ascetic aspiration for the law did, follow the Boy Snow Mountain's example and offer our bodies to a demon, or emulate Bodhisattva Medicine King in burning our arms? As the great teacher Chang'an stated, quote, "You should let your choices be fitting and never adhere solely to one or the other. The practice we should perform in order to master the correct teaching and attain Buddhahood depends upon the times. If there were no paper in Japan, then you should peel off your skin. If the Lotus Sutra had not yet been introduced to our country, and a single demon were to appear who knew it, then you should offer your body to him. If there were no oil available in our country, then you should burn your arms. But of what use is it to peel off our skin when the country has an abundant supply of heavy paper?" Xuan Tang journeyed throughout India in search of the Buddha's teachings. For 17 years, covering a distance of 100,000 ri, Dengyo remained in Tang, China for only 2 years, but he traveled 3,000 ri across the billowing sea to get there. These were all men, ancients, worthies, and sages. Never have I heard of a woman who journeyed 1,000 ri in search of Buddhism as you did. True, the Dragon King's daughter attained enlightenment without changing her present form, and the nun Mahaprajapati received a prediction that she would become a Buddha in the future. I am not certain, but they may have been female forms assumed by Buddhas or Bodhisattvas. After all, those events occurred in the Buddha's lifetime. The character of a man and woman differs from the outset. Fire is hot, water cold. Fishermen are skilled in catching fish, and hunters are proficient in trapping deer. A sutra states that women are clever at being jealous, but I've never heard of a woman that women are clever at Buddhism. A woman's mind is compared to a refreshing breeze. Even if one could bind the wind, it would be hard to grasp a woman's mind. A woman's mind is likened to writing on water because the characters do not remain on the surface. A woman is likened to a liar, for sometimes a liar's words are true and sometimes false. A woman's mind is compared to a river, for all rivers bend. So as I started out in this Go Show, he's explicitly explaining, or not explaining, but talking about his day and the place women occupy in society. So he's acknowledging her status as a woman, and at the same time, he's awestruck at what she was able to accomplish. The Lotus Sutra, however, contains such phrases as, quote, "honestly discarding expedient means," end quote, and "all that you, Shakyamuni, have expounded is the truth," end quote, quote, "honest and upright, gentle in intent," and "gentle, peaceful, honest, and upright." Those who believe in this sutra, therefore, must have minds that are as straight as a taut bowstring or a carpenter's inking line. One may call dung sandalwood, but it will not have the sandalwood's fragrance. A liar never becomes a truthful person simply because one calls him honest. All the sutras are the Buddha's golden teachings, his true words. When compared with the Lotus Sutra, however, they are false, flattering, abusive, or double-tongued. The Lotus Sutra alone is the truth of truths. Only honest people can keep resolute mind in this sutra, a teaching free from falsehood. Certainly, you are a woman who believes in the Buddha's true words. Think of it. Even if one were to meet a person who could cross the ocean carrying Mount Sumeru on his head, one could never find a woman like you. Even though one might find a person who could steam sand and make boiled rice of it, one could never meet a woman like you. You should know that Shakyamuni Buddha, many treasures Buddha, the Buddhas of the 10 directions, who are Shakyamuni's emanations, great bodhisattvas such as superior practices and boundless practices, Brahma, Shakra, the 4 heavenly kings, and other deities, will protect you just as a shadow accompanies a body. You are the foremost votary of the Lotus Sutra among the women of Japan. Therefore, following the example of Bodhisattva never disparaging, I bestow on you the Buddhist name, Sage Nichimyo. From Kamakura in Sagami province to the northern province of Sado is a journey of more than 1,000 ri over treacherous mountains and raging seas. There are sudden onslaughts of wind and rain, bandits lurk in the mountains, and pirates lie in wait on the sea. The people at every stage and every post town are as bestial as dogs or tigers, and you must have felt as though you were undergoing the sufferings of the three evil paths in this life. Moreover, we live in troubled times. Since last year, rebels have filled our country, and finally, on the 11th day of the second month of this year, a battle broke out. It is now almost the end of the 5th month, but society has not yet been restored to peace and security. Nevertheless, despite all the risks involved, you travel to Sado carrying your infant daughter, since her father, from whom you have long been separated, was not to be depended upon for her care. I cannot even imagine the hardships you must have suffered during your journey, much less describe them in words, so I will lay down my writing brush. Nichiren. Oof. Wow. That's quite moving a letter. No doubt Sage Nichimyo will not only be encouraged, but I have a feeling become a lifelong follower of Nichiren's doctrine. Whew, that was quite a tour de force, wasn't it? You could say it's just a very elaborate thank you note. It's really. But the elaborations were quite meaningful and enlightening, helpful, I think, to all of us who are trying to understand these words and these sutras in the light of our daily lives. Way to go, Nichimyo. Couldn't help it. There's a little joker inside of me, always talking to me. Anyway, I hope you learned something going through that. If nothing else, that Nichiren has many voices. And that too, I think, helps us understand the Gosho, as well as the greater Buddhist teachings, right? And with that, I will take my leave. Maybe get something to eat. And again, I repeat my admiration for your seeking spirit, your strong mind, your own dedication to the Buddhist practice and your own Buddha world, Buddha discovery, Buddha mind. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Keep it up. You are doing great. I'm no Nichiren. See you soon. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo.